Hey everyone, it's Peter Kerr from Daydream Nation, and welcome back to the channel. John the Music Nut, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing well, Peter. How about you?
Fantastic, and Merry Christmas, and have a wonderful 2026. This show, we are going to talk the Beatles, and I always dig talking about the Beatles. And this one, we are going to talk about a particular album which is very close to my heart, Rubber Soul, 1965. And this was actually released on the 3rd of December. So it's sort of almost, just over 60 years ago, this was released.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the premise of this show is Rubber Soul, the Beatles let down their masks, because I think this album is where the Beatles started to get a little bit of edge. Their playing was a little bit different, bit of aggression. And this is the last truly organic Beatles album before they went down the studio wizardry of George Martin, got the horns, got all the sound effects, and went into albums like Revolver and this little masterpiece, Sergeant Pepper. So I think if you want to talk about their last gasp of being a garage band, this is the last sort of truly organic album. And the Beatles were showing a little bit of maybe their true selves, because prior to that, they were the mop top, very clean cut. They had this persona, a lot of different angles we'll talk about in this show. What do you think of my opening? Do you agree with this?
To an extent, I do. I would say this is a segue between the organic Beatles and the more studio-oriented Beatles, and the more eclectic Beatles, I would say, because on here you're getting the band inventing Baroque pop. You have the band bringing in Indian influences. You have a album that has a little bit of R&B in their sound. Paul and John I think Paul in particular, he was kind of envious of the R&B songs back in the day because they were just so catchy and they had these elements to them with their harmonies and their call and response and all that. So I think it's a segue to that, but at the same time, yes, we do got a lot of loud guitars on here. We do still have songs that have very good guitar interplay. And I think on this album, they started getting more mature lyrically as well. They were getting away from the boy meets girl thing.
Yes.
And then as time went on, it was less and less of that. And then they were going in all different directions. So I think, yes, it works well as a segue album. And yes, probably the last one, they were really, really organic. Although you had a lot of that later on Abbey Road too, because they were trying to go back to their roots a little bit on that album, although like musically they were doing that, but that would be the last album they would actually record.
Yeah, look, there are moments that they are organic in subsequent albums, but I think as a collective of songs, this is the last gasp of really being united and organic. So I want to take you on the journey. Like, when you look at this album cover, they look weary, they look scuzzed out, and it's not the clean mop top. So something is straight out is a little bit different. I think it's one of the most amazing album covers because it's real, it's authentic. I own about 6 versions of this album, different variants. I've seen different variants all around the world. I've even seen one. I was in Tokyo recently. I saw a Russian version. A lot of money. I just couldn't justify it. But I think when you look at the album cover, that's like a gateway to what the record sounds. And I find the playing on this, the chords, the strumming, the drums, the bass, it's all played with a lot of vigor. They're really hitting the notes hard, and there's a bit of intent. And when you look at the lyrics, they've been on the road for a long time, and I think they were starting to get Jack of Beatlemania very weary. And especially with Lennon, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say sarcasm, but his lyrics are very spiky, tart. There's a little bit of edge. And even with Paul McCartney, who's Mr. Sweetness and Light, he's starting to have a little bit of darkness. And his lyrics are showing a little bit of dark complexity. So perhaps let's just go through the songs, and that would be the way to navigate what I believe, and you can counterpoint it and we can take it from there. So this album's called Rubber Soul, and which is a play on Plastic Soul. And I think it goes into what you were saying about how they were kind of envious of the R&B and the Motown and all that sort of style of music. So that was like a counterpoint. But this first song, Drive My Car's got a bit of that, bit of groove, bit of R&B. I don't know whether it's the keyboards and it's the Paul McCartney bass line. It certainly drives it along. And I think it's a great opening track for this album.
Yes, you got a very lyrical and maybe at that time noisy guitar solo in here as well. But you have nice guitar interplay with George and John, and then Paul's bass coming in there. You have that piano there, that R&B sounding like piano in the choruses, and hooks galore. That's one thing about the Beatles. They had songs with one song with great hooks after another. They would have more great hooks in a song than a lot of bands would have in their career. But you think about so many little memorable parts in this song, even though it's less than 3 minutes long. That chorus is very memorable, the guitar solo, and that beep, beep, yeah, before they go into it. Although I went a little higher there. So there's a lot to really, really enjoy. And the song really, really rocks.
2 minutes, 25 seconds doesn't outstay its welcome, does it? And another part of this is that not only it has that element of R&B, there's a little bit of power pop and a little bit of what you could call the beat movement, because the Beatles were at the forefront of the beat movement that came out of the Mersey. So Dave Clark 5. So there's a little bit of that thrown in as well. I think it's just a great little confection of all of what I've described, and it's a cracker of an opening song.
No doubt about it.
Now you go into the second song, Norwegian Wood, This Bird Has Flown, and you think, wow, this band has matured, because the lyrics are very knowing, very mature, and it's talking about a relationship with a man and a woman that are it's adult, and talking in a sense of just very contemporary, what was actually happening in 1965, and not sugarcoating it into something that's like conservative 1950s. So yeah, do you agree? This is the first sign on the album that, oh, this is an adult Beatles. They are growing, and it matches the cover. Yeah.
It certainly does. So you were talking about the cover. Look at George and Ringo's eyes on the cover. They're looking for something different here. Like they're questioning things. That's what you see. And they're looking a little shaggier here with their mop tops. So that does give a great indication of what we're going to hear. With Norwegian Wood, yes, this is about a relationship song again, but we're going into deeper things within relationships on this song. That melody, it just sticks right in your head. And that sitar in there, this is probably the first very popular secular song where sitar was a very important part of it. And the sitar is replicating that melody. And this is something that the Beatles would do over and over again for the. So that's what you have here. You're hearing a new maturity in pop music, I believe, on this song. Both lyrically for the Beatles, you already had it with Bob Dylan and a few other artists, but musically, they're adding things to their palette
Yeah,
and
that
it sounds seamless.
Bob Dylan. He's the
Yes,
he's the conduit of this album because they were getting very inspired. And there's a lot of songs on this album that I could hear Bob Dylan playing. This is a very Dylan-esque type song with that sort of the guitar play, the chordal structure. So I know the Beatles were definitely grooving on what Bob was doing, transatlantic. But rightly, this is a classic song. The next one is You Won't See Me. So again, this is a little bit of tart, isn't it? There's a little bit of spike in this song. A McCartney number. What do you think of this one?
there is more spike in it, no doubt about it. It hits hard, but like a harder R&B. Because the R&B, the vocals on this are very R&B. A lot of la la la's going on while they're doing John's doing the lead vocal on here. Nice call and response at the end of the chorus. If you won't see me, you won't see me. There's a great hook right there. And then you got a great bridge after that that works very well. But the guitars are hitting harder here. It's more garage rock as you were indicating with their earlier albums.
Mm,
We
mm.
still have that here. Not a single, but would have been a great single. The thing was, the Beatles were writing so many great songs. It was like, well, which one do we choose? Wonderful track.
Yeah, it's one of those songs that it kind of is in that subgenre of songs that Paul does, where you've got this really clippy good chord structure. I relate it to something. It's like a sister or a cousin of Getting Better. We're getting
Yes.
better all the time. It's really
Mm.
clippy lyrics, really straight, really direct, but there's a bit of tart. And, Mr. Sunshine himself, Paul McCartney, I think it's a narrative that is totally incorrect. He had darkness in his lyrics. You just got to dig it and it's there. And, you won't see me. Just look at the song title. Nowhere Man. I think this song is as cynical as it gets. John at his cynical best. It's socially observant, and it really just describes the weariness, challenging the establishment. Basically, I think it wasn't especially about. This is my interpretation, folks. I don't think it was about a specific person, but I think it was about people per se, because in Beatlemania, they would have been coming across all kind of grifters and charlatans and all sorts of fakery. And I think he was writing this as a metaphor for all these sorts of characters that he was encountering, whether it was in his, in the Beatles or what he was seeing on TV. This is as dark, pitch black, cynical as it comes. What do you think?
It's a segue into what would come later in the 60s because there were rumblings at this point, but we were just starting to go into war again, although we wouldn't have as many troops going over there until a few years later. And then it was causing a divide here in the States. But John Lennon, as someone who was from England, he's seeing this because they're touring the States. They know what's going on. They're part of what's what's changing in the country, how things are getting a little bit different now. This is an observation of that. And you can interpret it as something that you're going through personally or something that you see, from a distance.
I think you're spot on. Absolutely spot on. They were seeing what was happening in the world and absorbing it.
Absolutely. And then going back to musically, and something that I wanted to talk about. I was meaning to talk about Norwegian Wood. You got that extra voice on there on the harmonies at the end of Nowhere Man, which is a good hook right before the song ends, and then you have it on Norwegian Wood during the bridge. So what they're doing here lyrically is they're really maturing, but they're adding even more to their palette again on what they're doing vocally, and the song structures very, very good. Where and as the Beatles want earlier in their career, we're starting the song with the chorus, and the chorus is very memorable.
Get straight into it. Yes, 100%. The playing, I was just focusing. I was zeroing on the strumming of the chords because the acoustic, really heavy strums. They're really getting into it. I just think there's a lot of, I wouldn't say it's aggression, but there's controlled aggression on this album in regards to the playing. I feel that Star's hitting the drums hard, and I think everyone is playing the guitar. They're playing their instruments that little bit harder. I think this album's got a little bit of edge, John the Music Nut.
It
A
does
real lot of
because
edge.
it does because if you listen, another hook in this song is the end of that the guitar lines that end the vocal lines. Din 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 din. That's a riff, people, but it just doesn't have the distortion.
And what about the way he enunciates nobody?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
They've got fire in their belly.
They
So
do.
I think they're a bit pissed off. Seriously, I
The
think
intangible. It's the intangibles.
they've had enough of Beatlemania because let's look at the chronological of events. It's not that far that they pull up stumps and don't play live anymore, and they go into the studio forever. So the writing's on the wall.
No doubt about it.
Think for yourself. Another cynical song. George Harrison showing us a little bit of a glimmer of what was to come with his great little bits and pieces. I love George Harrison, even in the early Beatle albums. I love a George Harrison cameo. Chimes in. He's always, he puts this little bit of cynicism, like the following album, it's Taxman.
Yes.
And you can tell that his songwriting is getting better and better. He's developing as a songwriter, you know.
No doubt about it, but it was hard to, and this has been said millions of times, it was hard for him to express himself when you have two master songwriters already here. So he's getting in what he can, but
Yeah.
at this point, what he's bringing in is top notch.
Yeah. Think for yourself. Top notch.
It is top notch and
Yeah.
very scathing, very poignant lyric on this. You can make interpretations on some of these other songs we talked about. Well, this one, exactly what George is singing about.
He's being direct.
He's being very direct.
He's not tolerating fools. He is connecting with the listener and just being very direct in what he's saying.
And this is one of the hardest hitting songs on the album.
Yeah.
Music.
Absolutely. The word.
And again, you'll have that third voice coming in, putting another voice on top, like a higher voice on there. But the lyrics are very trippy, I guess I would say. The presentation is as well, the way the drums are recorded on here. It has like a hard 50s groove to it, but vocally and lyrically, you see where they're going here. Like I was saying with Segway album, here's another segue to what you would hear on Revolver, Sgt. Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour. Yeah, this is a segue song, one that doesn't get discussed often,
It's a deep cut. It holds up really, really well. It's
Absolutely.
vibrant. It's hard hitting. Michelle. So this is where it's kind of a crooner song. So Paul McCartney is. This is a, Paul loves music hall. He loves the crooner songs. He loves, the old time music that he heard when he was a kid, whether it's Edith Piaf or whatnot. To me, this is like his tribute to those types of artists. And he continued to do this all the way through to the end of the Beatles. So where you sit on the ledger, you either like it or you don't like it. And I like it. And I think there was a little bit of a revival where there was a lot happening in the 60s where French cinema and French music was very chic.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of
Mm-hmm.
he's wrapping up a little song which is part croon, part old time music, but also a bit of a torch to what was happening in French music or European music and picking up on that. What do you think of
And
this song?
yeah, and occasionally during the 60s, you had artists from different genres putting out albums with French titles. Let's not forget about that. It's it's a whimsical song. It's sentimental. Paul was always the sentimental one, and you'd hear a lot more of that when he went solo with Wings. But the harmonies on here are wonderful. But it's very the guitar lines are very gentle. And then we go into that solo, which is very different than anything else we would hear on this album, but it's something that sticks in your brain. Like lyrically, it's I need you, I need you, I
Mm,
need you. Like
mm.
schmaltzy, right? It depends what you like, but it's still a very memorable song, and it does have that ode to French music on here, no doubt about it.
Yeah, because that was totally hip and chic in that time. All that was happening in 1965. All right, well, you flip the album on over and you come up with What Goes On with Mr. Richard Starkey, Ringo, singing lead vocals. And I like this. Again, when you listen to this, because, a lot of folk may think this is a bit of a throwaway song, but I think it's far from throwaway. You listen to the playing on it, and it goes back to what I've been saying. This is very hard hitting. All the playing, the drumming, the strumming of the strings, you can actually hear the fingers on the fretboard. They're really hitting it hard for this little pop ditty.
Yeah, and the thing is, it isn't it hard, but it still has that jangly feel to it. Like a
Mm.
jangly feel, but it still has a 50s feel to it. The way Ringo sings it, it's kind of off kilter. Out the way he ends the lines, the lyrical lines on here, how he pronunciates them.
Yes.
It's in like a lot of people say it's a throwaway. It's a good song. It just think about what else is around it. It fits in well with the album. It has more of a older feel to it than what you have on some of these other songs. You're hearing what's going to become more prominent in modern music. But it's a really cool tune.
Yeah. Listen to the rhythm guitar, and they're really.
Mm-hmm.
If you heard the isolated guitar track, you'd hear these just. You could feel like they're really swinging it. These really heavy clipped guitar strums.
Yeah,
So
it's more like Carl Perkins. It's
yeah.
like late 50s than 65.
Mm, yep. And there is a little bit of inference of the country type of music that Ringo was going to pursue in some, like Don't Pass Me By off the White Album. and that
Yes.
country album that he did in the early 70s. So there's a lot of hints in this album of what's to come. It is very much a segue album, but again, I think it's the last truly organic Beatles album. Girl, to me, I've always found the chorus where he goes, "Girl," it's like he's having sucking a toad of a, a joint or something like. What do you think?
You hear John, you mentioned the band sounding weary, particularly John. He sounds weary here. Like tired, but at the same time, yes, it does have that druggy feel with those long held
Inhale,
notes.
inhale, exhale.
Yeah, that long inhale and
Mm.
exhale in there. Yeah, it does have that drug feel, but it's this slower folk song, and it does have a druggy feel, but at the same time, those guitar lines are really memorable on there. It's a cool tune. It's a different tune, but yes, you're already hearing. Well, we're kind of get. They were all these 64 and 65. They were everywhere. They were super busy making music, doing live performances, doing promotional performances. They were out constantly. You hear the weariness on a song like this,
I think
even
it's summed
musically,
up.
you do.
Yes, I think you're right. He was just ready to take off that suit uniform and just be himself.
Exactly.
So I think this song kind of reveals his inner feelings just
I
through the
agree.
delivery of the lyrics. Very weary.
I agree.
Paul, I'm looking through you. Again, Mr. Sunshine, I'm looking through you.
Power pop. This is power pop before we had a name for it. Listen to the guitar interplay here between John and George. It's excellent, but very one of the more upbeat songs on the album, no doubt about it. You were talking about organic Beatles. This would have fit right in on a hard day's night or Meet the Beatles. It has that kind of feel, but it's very, very memorable. It's very, very good deep cut, but it's just classic power pop several years before we had a name for it, and it became more prominence.
But it's not sunny. And when you look at the majority of these tracks on the album, there's 14
Lyrically, it
tracks.
isn't.
If there was a pie chart, the majority of the pie chart would be cynicism, bit of darkness, not totally happy. There's not a lot of sunny pop on this, sunshine pop. This one,
Right. Like,
and for McCartney, the lyrics are very biting. So I think he's inspired by Lennon because there's a competition, very healthy competition, and they're trying to outdo each other, and it's just great for the band. It's rising and rising and rising, and so Lennon does a Nowhere Man, and he's Mr. Cynicism. And McCartney probably goes to his pad and pen and says, "Well, I've got to beat that."
right.
So there's a competition.
He's trying to out Lennon.
Yes.
I say and when I say upbeat, I'm talking more the presentation, not the lyrics
Oh
themselves,
yeah, yeah,
the
absolutely.
music.
Yeah,
But
yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
because the thing with Lennon and McCartney, which would really become noticeable as time went on, they had different styles as far as how they wrote. You knew eventually you could pick up what Lennon wrote and what McCartney wrote, regardless of who was singing on it.
Mm. Yeah,
But here, he's trying. Oh, you can make a biting song. What? Hear this.
yep, absolutely. Next song, In My Life, masterpiece. It's probably the most melancholy song. This, and it just shows. the maturity of this band. Like they were in their 20s, and that they pull out a gem like this, and it just looks. It's just a reflection of how they feel, looking back, looking forward. Um, and you're starting to get those little George Martin flourishes with the Baroque keyboard line, which is just beautiful. The way it's just edited into the song, just perfect. But even with the song itself, with the verse and the chorus, the instrumentation is really hard hitting. Listen to the drumming, you know. So Ringo, he was just perfect for the band. So he's part of the mix. And the synergy he did in combining with Paul McCartney with a song like this is just magic. But I love this song a lot. I think it's one of the strongest songs on the album in my life.
I think it's one of the best songs they ever wrote. Look at it again. We're talking about maturity and lyrics. It's a very memorable song. George Martin had the piano to sound like a harpsichord on that solo.
Mm.
And that would lead to a lot of Baroque pop in the 60s, particularly a band like the Left Bank. But it's a song that has a universal feel to it. I like songs that have a universal feel. Check out how many singers have covered this song over the years.
Mm.
Ozzy Osbourne covered it. Johnny Cash covered it.
Bette Midler.
Bette Midler covered it.
Everybody.
Crosby, Stills and Nash covered it.
Absolutely. Do you think this is the most sentimental Lennon song he's ever written? Because Lennon always has a little bit of tart, a little bit of starch. But do you think this is probably the most sentimental song? This is about as sentimental you would get Lennon to ever be in the Beatles catalogue? I think maybe the answer is yes.
Yes, I mean, I'd have to go back and listen to everything, but it's probably the most sentimental song that he wrote that is his most famous one. It wasn't a single.
Within the Beatles, I'm saying.
I'm saying within
the
Beatles too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about Imagine here, but yes, I would. I mean, I wouldn't doubt it. I'd have to go back and listen to the catalog, but I think it's a reasonable thing to say about this song in regards to John.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Lennon in the first half of the Beatles was the creative genius in the band. And whether it was his interest had started to wane and other involvement, I think Paul started to take over and direct the band. When I say take over, it wasn't like an invasion sort of thing. It was, he just wanted to keep the band going, and it sort of defaulted to him. But clearly, when you look at the band, those videos, live in concert, your eyes are on John. He's the leader. He's the dude.
Yes.
The first half. But when they went into the studio, Macca was probably the band leader. And John just probably deferred and allowed that to happen. But around this time, he's the man. And you look at the album cover, where do your eyes look at first?
The one that's looking right at you.
Yes, you're looking at him. He's the man. Great song. Wait. Lennon and McCartney, what do you think of this one?
Okay, we got John and Paul harmonizing on here. This goes back to what you were saying about the last album being organic. There's a lot of tart on this album. Do you really hear that on the guitars and on here and the delivery? Very well written song. A little different the way it's written. Musically, it's got these passages that you normally don't hear in 60s music. In 60s music, it was getting very progressive and very challenging as time went on. They were really, the 50s sound like tame compared to what came in the 60s. when you hear this song, the way it's written, the harmonies are wonderful on it. And there's parts of this song that you don't think they're going to work, but it sounds so cohesive that it does. It's a hard-hitting song on this album, and it's a little different, but very well written. And it's a keeper. It's a very good song.
It's a deep cut, but it's a great song. And that's the thing about this album. Even the deep cuts are better than most bands' best songs.
Exactly.
So I think that there was this healthy competition between the two alpha males in the band, and they were just one upping each other. And what you get is just a gem of an album. So I haven't got much more to add. I really agree with what you said. It's a different sounding song, but it does fall in with this theme that I've been sort of harping about. This is the last truly organic, hard-hitting Beatles album. Harrison, if I needed someone, to me, this is like a precursor to the Summer of Love. I'm thinking of the Byrds, Jefferson Airplane, the late 60s. So to me, this is like the dawn of Aquarius before Hair or Aquarius actually happened. The beautiful harmonies. Again, another George Harrison nugget.
No doubt about it. First thing I think of when I hear this song is the Byrds, with that folk rock sound and the Rickenbacker guitars. It's a very memorable song. Very pretty guitar lines on here. Heavenly harmonies, especially when they go into the verses. They're very, very strong. And this would be the best song on so many of their contemporaries' albums at this time. It would be big highlights. Thus, the champion songwriting, the craftsmanship here. This band put the craft and craftsmanship in the 60s. But you listen to this, this could have been another huge hit for them if they chose to release it, because there's so many great hooks to it. It's a wonderful track.
It is. I agree with you. The last song, a little bit controversial, Run for Your Life. And John, in a later interview, kind of regretted the lyrics. And it does go with the theme of the album where, everything's a little bit tart, a little bit spiky. And, knowing the history of John and the story of John, it probably takes on in 2025, 2026, a little bit of a different dimension. It's a little bit unusual to finish the album on such a tart note. It's a bit of a beat song. I'd say it's fully in the Beatles' beat groove. And it's one of the more early sounding Beatles songs. To me, this sounds like it could come off the previous three albums. So maybe it's their way of bye-bye.
Saying goodbye to that era.
And putting it...
Excellent point.
But what do you think about this song?
Musically, I think it kicks butt. I love it musically. It's just a kick-ass rock and roll song. Lyrically, when I love this song, but I don't really think about the lyrics when I hear it. But then if you go and you pay attention to lyrics, oh yeah, I can see why a lot of people would be offended by it. He was channeling Elvis Presley's song, Baby Let's Play House. Now, when that was recorded, it was a more innocent time. A lot of things that were happening weren't being revealed out in the open. Everything wasn't so public. So, yeah, he would regret writing this. A lot of people said, well, what I've read and what I've heard is that John had a reputation with how he was with some women. Now, it's just things that I've read.
Yeah, absolutely.
And some people listen to lyrics like, hey, it's here.
Mm,
But I'm more of a music guy before lyrics. I think musically it kicks butt. It's very hard hitting. Again, you're saying last organic album. It's a song that really, really rocks, but lyrically is not aged well.
yeah, that's that's the paradox here because some of the greatest pop and rock lyrics of all time are found within the Beatles. So how
Mm-hmm.
can you analyze and look at I Am the Walrus and Strawberry Fields Forever and celebrate that, but on the same time, I'm not a lyrics guy and I'll ignore Run for Your Life? You've got to look at the whole
Yeah.
thing. Maybe John in his 20s was a different person. Um, Maybe I'm looking out of context. I don't know, but it's there, and I just think it's a little bit. It finishes the out. I can only think that it's their way of saying a goodbye to what was previous because it seems a little bit strange from a track listing that they've put this song right at the end.
Musically, it fits exactly what you're saying. We're saying goodbye to the
Mm.
old Beatles here, musically. But if you go back to the 50s, there were songs, or even if you go back in the 30s and 40s and you listen to blues songs that would be
Yeah,
covered by,
absolutely.
by a lot of rock artists,
Absolutely.
they could have different meanings.
But he called himself out. He called himself out in an interview, Rolling Stone interview, and he said, "I do regret writing that song." I don't know the context of the question, whether he was challenged, but he was definitely on record. Well, there you have it, Rubber Soul. I say this is top three Beatles. I'm sorry, it's one I constantly go to, and I just love it because I agree with you. It's a segue album. I think it's because it's a bit of the old, it's a bit of the now in 65, and it's a bit of the future before it goes into that.
Yes. And that was where Paul really started writing the bulk of the work, even though A Day in the Life was John Lennon, and that's timeless. But most of that album was Paul. And yes, I mean, they took music to unthinkable heights at that point. And then, the Beatles were always changing things. They were adapting some Dylan and adapting some Birds and adapting some R&B. Yet we're taking music forward by bringing in instruments to invent Baroque pop. And then later on, working with the studio, making the studio their own instrument, creating psychedelia, making making songs that were really, really hard that would actually lead to heavy metal. Listen to a song like Helter Skelter and how hard hitting that is. I'm not saying it's a heavy metal song, but that is a wicked song for its time. It's a segue to what would come later. The Beatles were like they were the segue to the change in music in the 1960s.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. Whether
it,
you
it,
like
it
whatever
wasn't
music you like, the Beatles are the start.
exactly. And the thing with this band, you were saying Rubber Soul being your top three. It's hard for me. It's always been my top five, but my top five's always changing. It's crazy. Maybe it would be my number two or three right now. Abbey Road's usually been my number one because they were going back to basics, but there there's more of a segue into what's going in the future. It's more organic. But then they wrote that big suite on there, which I really love. But here we're more organic and we're still moving forward. And Revolver takes us to another level. as far as moving forward musically. And then Sergeant Pepper. I mean, come on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, John the Music Nut. It's been wonderful
Thank
talking
you.
to you.
Thank you. You as
Happy
well.
Christmas. And
Merry Christmas.
folks, I hope you've had a wonderful day. Haven't eaten too much, haven't indulged too much. But do yourself a favor, listen to the Beatles' Rubber Soul, because I'm telling you, 60 years later, it sounds as fresh as a daisy. It really pops out of the speaker and it just sounds like it's not dated, because
No,
classic rock isn't dated because it's not prone to something that's locked into a time. It's timeless. And that's what
no,
good
no.
music is all about, being timeless. Check John the Music Nuts music channel. I'll put it below. Please like and subscribe to Rock Daydream Nation. We cover all genres of music, not just hard rock and heavy metal, but we love to read your comments. Tell us what you think of Rubber Soul. But one thing's for sure, you'll see me and John the Music Nut doing more shows in 2026 and beyond. All the best and cheers. See you later. Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas.